Just before we show the film, I'll briefly mention some motifs and some themes, and I'm sure that you will pick up on these as you see the film itself, things that make this such a richly nuanced work. It's full of contrasts and even sort of inversions of things that you will pick up on. For example, it's set in a small town called El Olivo, and when you first see it, it's a dying town. Hardly anybody lives there. The electricity's been cut off. Then there's a flashback to a time when the town was very vibrant and full of life. And then when we come back to the present time at the end of the film, we're back to this dying town where almost nobody lives anymore. The depressing present at the time the film was made. There's also inversions or contrasts in sex roles. The leading character in the film is a gay man who's called Manuela. Not Manuel, but Manuela. So he's a man, but he's gay, and he assumes sort of a feminine persona. And in one scene, he is actually seduced by a woman. So there you have a reversal. Usually it's the man seducing the woman. In this case, it's vice versa. You've got the macho character, Pancho. He has a lot of girlfriends. He's married. He's a truck driver. He's got big biceps. He's a very macho guy. But then in the context of the film, you'll see he cries, and he has this sort of love-hate relationship with Manuela, the gay man. So that's a little bit of a contrast or an inversion there. You'll also see some things done with family roles. Manuela is the adoptive father of La Japonesita, but really she's the mature one in the relationship. She sort of treats him like a child and tells him what to do because he's very insecure about himself. And Don Alejo, who is the sort of the boss of the town, he feels betrayed by Pancho. Pancho is sort of his surrogate son. So once again, you have a family relationship which really isn't a family relationship, and yet it's dysfunctional, like a lot of family relationships are. So you also have some contrasts in businesses. You have a lot of the film is set in a small town brothel, which is run by women. So you've got a macho society and even just general stereotypes. Men are the ones who run the world, but in this particular film, you've got the business that the film revolves around is run by women. Pancho, the man, he's a truck driver and he's struggling in his business. And Don Alejo, very rich man, yet he's killing a town to try to make a profit. So there's a number of contrasts, and one character is set against another character, compared against another character. The last two things I'll mention before we show the film. Obviously, this film, if you've heard about it at all or you read the notes, it's considered somewhat of a landmark figure in the portrayal of gays in Mexican popular culture and Mexican film. You'll notice in this film and other Mexican films or Mexican popular culture, there are a lot of pejorative terms thrown around for homosexuals, gays. They use the term maricones or jotos or putos. Those are all very negative terms referring to gay characters. But actually in Mexican popular culture and films, gays aren't really treated too badly. I mean, they're considered sort of humorous jokes, but they're not really abused. And so then you get to wondering, well, what context does that have in greater Mexican society? I mean, are gays seen as a threat to a macho society, or they're just confused, or they're just one big joke? This film, as I said, is considered somewhat of a watershed, although actually several films which followed in the 1980s have a much greater reputation in terms of their treatment of gays. There's one from 1982 called El Hombre de la Mandolina, the man with the mandolin, which is a film in which a family, a bourgeois family in a provincial town, is so ashamed of their gay son that they arranged to have him murdered. So that's not exactly a positive image, but the film itself is very frank in its discussion. And then the most famous Mexican film to break the barrier about treatment of gays is a 1984 film called Doña Erlinda y su hijo, Doña Erlinda and her son, which basically says, you know, everybody's pretty much the same, whether they're gay or straight. Everybody's a human being, and everybody has certain basic rights. In this film, certainly Manuela is separate from the town, separate from everybody else, because he's a gay man, and yet he's treated in a very sympathetic fashion, which is interesting. This film was produced by one of the 3 government production companies that were established during the presidency of Luis Echeverria in the 1970s. Filmmakers were encouraged to make films about social topics, especially about Mexican subjects. And so you see a number of rather daring, controversial films made in this period. However, this was towards the end of the period. In fact, Arturo Ripstein made another film the same year as El Lugar Sin Límites, a film called La Viuda Negra, which was about a housekeeper for a village priest who has an affair with him. And that film was so controversial, and it came right at the time when a new, more conservative administration took over Mexico, was that film, as opposed to being critically acclaimed like El Lugar Sin Límites, La Viuda Negra was actually suppressed and didn't get released for 6 years. So this came out just at the right time, and Viuda Negra missed the boat and came out during a more conservative administration. Of course, this film isn't all about gays or dysfunctional families and things like that. There are also a few pointed jabs about political life of provincial Mexico, the concept of caciquismo, where you have a cacique who's the strong man of a town or a particular region who runs the town. In this case, Don Alejo, we'll see he literally owns the whole town and controls the whole town. So there are some minor little political references there as well. And so this film, like many good films, is full of food for thought and topics for discussion. And so, without any further ado, let's show El Lugar Sin Límites.